is the personification of complete surrender. Right? He's the perfect example. Complete surrender is one of it's the last of the 10 processes of devotional service, 10 processes of bhakti. And there's an example given for each process, someone who exemplifies that particular process. And when it comes to Atmanivedana, or complete surrender to the Lord, Bali Maharaj exemplifies this to the utmost degree. Sometimes Ambarish also Maharaj is mentioned, but Bali Maharaj certainly exemplifies this. We have to remember, anyway, it behooves us to remember. We don't have to do anything we don't want, right? We're stubborn that way. But it behooves us to remember that whenever we surrender to Krishna, or give to Krishna, or offer to Krishna, we are never the loser. Okay? Whenever Krishna is the dominant part of the equation, it's auspicious, it's good, the right thing will happen. So, so that, sometimes we hear that a kick is as good as a kiss, right? This is what is meant by that, If Krishna kicks us, that's cool, because that's for our benefit. It's like receiving discipline from someone whom we trust, right? They're doing this for our own good. They're not acting out in their own anger or for their own reasons. So Krishna can kiss me, he can kick me, it's all good, it's all auspicious. Demons whom Krishna kills attain liberation. If you're killed by Krishna, you attain liberation. No matter whether you're acting out of fear, like Kamsa, or if you're acting out of anger, like Hiranyakashipu, Krishna will kill you and you will attain liberation. And perhaps not the highest liberation that there is, but you will be liberated from this material body. It brings to mind Lord Chaitanya's Shikshastakam, the last prayer of Lord Chaitanya's Shikshastakam prayers. He says, I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He's completely free to do anything and everything, because he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. This is complete surrender. When we talk about surrender, we talk about there being two types of surrender. And particularly in the West, certainly in America, the first type of surrender that normally comes to mind is this idea of forced surrender. The connotation here is one of being a loser. It's weakness. It's like I put up the white flag. I put the L on my forehead, like a scarlet letter, L for loser, and with my head hung low, I am taken by the other party to be thrown into a prison or tortured or something like that. I surrender. I lose the battle. I lose the war. However, that's not the only kind of surrender. Excuse me. There's also loving surrender. And we don't always think about this, but we do it all the time. The thing is, we surrender. Another way to think about this is by, instead of saying surrender, we could think of it as submitting. We submit ourselves, or we offer ourselves to another. So that's another way to think about it. So I'm going to submit myself to you. I'm going to offer myself to you. We surrender ourselves when we formally take on a guru, a spiritual master. We're offering ourselves to that guru. Now I'm your instrument. You do with me what you want. And that's very difficult for many of us. But we also submit ourselves to a partner in marriage. That's another way we go. We offer ourselves to another person. I'm here. I will take care of you. I will serve you. We surrender ourselves when we enroll in university. Right? I'm at the whims of whatever the university tells me to do. I will follow your rules, your regulations. We surrender ourselves when we accept employment. Right? We're also at somebody else's mercy. This happens in other ways too. It happens all the time in our lives, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. These things are all for our benefit, and that's the thing. We surrender ourselves. We choose to surrender ourselves when we believe that that's the worthwhile thing to do. So my question to you all right now is, do we believe that surrendering to Krishna is worthwhile? And I will not accept an autopilot yes in reply to this question. Yes, of course, that's what I'm supposed to say. But I want you to think about whether or not you believe that surrendering yourself to Krishna is actually worthwhile. And it's something that I'm thinking about. Is it worthwhile for me? Because it's not, I've mentioned this point before. Faith is not simply, I believe that you exist. That's a part of faith, but it's a low rung on the ladder of faith. I believe that you're there. But what is the consequence of you being there? The consequence may be me having to make some adjustments in my life. If I want a relationship with you, then I may have to adjust what I'm doing. If I want a relationship with you, it's not I may have to, I have to bring you into my life more. Because I believe you exist can be such a passive thing. I believe that you exist can keep you way over there and me way over here. And I can do my thing and you can do your thing. And somebody can say like, hey, do you believe Krishna exists? And I go, yeah, I believe Krishna exists. And I'm still doing my own thing. But to climb that ladder of faith, I'm going to incorporate Krishna in my life more. And I'm going to develop that relationship with Krishna more. And the more I develop that relationship, the more he's going to become part of my life. So it's, I think, worthwhile for us to ask ourselves, do we believe that surrendering to Krishna is worthwhile? So while you're chewing on that question, let's go to what Srila Prabhupada talks about here in the purport. He says, he points out that Vishnu cannot be killed by anyone. And that's a fact. However, sometimes he will accept defeat. Why? To play. He'll accept defeat to play or to engage in relationship with his devotees. So we see this with the Gopas. He's playing with the other cowherd boys, and they actually have, fake battles or games that they play, competitions, and the loser has to carry the winner on his shoulders, or the loser has to do this or that. And sure enough, sometimes Krishna loses, because how much fun is it going to be for both the Gopas and even Krishna if he wins all the time, and then they can come to know that he's going to win anyway, so why should we play this? And that can lead to like they're recognizing his godhood, which they don't do. They're behind a veil of yoga maya, which brings the best kind of forgetfulness. Right now we're trying to forget that we're under the veil of Mahamaya, which is the bad kind of forgetfulness. Like, I am alone, I am independent of Krishna. But Yoga Maya is the good kind of forgetfulness, where I forget Krishna is God, because once I forget Krishna is God, then I can really enjoy some ras. And I can go further into intimacy with Godhead. This is, unheard of in a lot of traditions. But this is what Lord Chaitanya has opened up to us. And this is what Srila Prabhupada has given us. Lord Chaitanya has said, let's give it to everyone. The most intimate possible relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with Krishna. Let's open it up to everybody. So that's why, because Lord Chaitanya has opened this up to us, that's why we want to not just worship Krishna and not just Radha Krishna, but we want to worship Lord Chaitanya. It's very beautifully said that if you dive into the waters of Lord Chaitanya, then you come up on the shores of Radha Krishna Leela. So yeah, Lord Chaitanya, but Srila Prabhupada has brought us to Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya will bring us to Sri Sri Radha Krishna. So the Gopas conquer over Krishna. Yet Mother Yashoda, of course, can conquer over Krishna. And in other ways, he allows defeat. In the past time where he is fighting with Kaliya, the serpent, Prabhupada writes that, I guess I'm thinking of Krishna, but I guess it's in Bhagavatam there also, where they're fighting for 2 hours. Now, there are some demons that Krishna fights where he just like picks them up and he throws them and they're dead. Before they swing them by the legs, and before they smack into a tree and fall down dead, they're dead while they're being swung. But for 2 hours, he's fighting Kaliya. Why? Because he's having a hard time? I don't think so. Because he's having fun. He's playing with his devotee. And lest anyone is thinking they're like, oh, well, what kind of God, just uses his devotee as a plaything and, fights with him. No. Kaliya wants this. This is play for Kaliya too. Externally, it seems like he's suffering, but again, when Krishna is the dominant part of the equation, it's all good. So it's good for Kaliya. It's good for Krishna. When he's fighting Hiranyakashipu, when Lord Nrsingadev, who is Krishna, is fighting Hiranyakashipu, Bhagavatam says that Hiranyakashipu slips from Nrsingadev's hands at some point, slips from his hands. And there's this moment of, oh no, what's going to happen now? But that's exactly why Lord Nrsingadev allows this to happen. Again, it's not a mistake. It's not that Hiranyakashipu gets the upper hand for a moment. It's that Krishna wants to increase the tension, right? And in any good drama, there has to be tension. You don't watch a movie because everything is hunky-dory the whole time. Hunky-dory is, wow, such an old reference. No one says hunky-dory anymore. What am I showing my age? All right. It's not that everything in the movie, everything is just happening perfectly the whole time. There's no drama if that's the case. You need the tension of, there's resistance, there's conflict, there's obstacles, something is away, that's drama. So Krishna creates this in his own real life dramatic playing. So he lets Hiranyakashipu slip from his hands, and he goes, oh, what's going to happen? And increases the tension, and it's just play. It's just play. And there are other instances as well where Krishna allows himself to be defeated. And those last couple were temporary defeats, not complete defeat. But there are a lot of these examples. So Srila Prabhupada offers that the real meaning of lie down having been killed by me, right? Where's that? The Brahmana, Lord Vishnu, would either lie down having been killed by me, or he would kill me in a fight. Prabhupada offers that this real meaning is that Lord Vishnu would reside within the core of Bali Maharaj's heart. He would reside within the core of Bali Maharaj's heart. Now, this is a sort of a different way to think about something that many of us take for granted. The fact that God is in our hearts. And that's a fact, God is in our hearts. But he's not talking about Paramatma here. Paramatma can take a passive role. He's talking about an active, Krishna actively entering within the innermost locus of the chamber of love, entering into our personal chamber of love where the pure devotion of the pure devotee freely flows. That's where it's at. And Krishna can enter into that space when we've ourselves are able, when we've purified ourselves to the extent that we can access that chamber. And in that chamber of love, the Lord of the universe will lay his head, will lay down, overwhelmed, overcome, overjoyed in what might feasibly be called, feasibly and lovingly be called defeat. Yadunath, the Lord of the universe, will enter that chamber, lay down, lay his head, overwhelmed, overcomes and overjoyed in what might feasibly and lovingly be called surrender. Because there's trust. In a war, if I surrender to you because I lose the battle, I'm weak, I'm a loser, I have to surrender, I'm forced to surrender. There's still no trust. Now it's like, oh, what's going to happen to me now? What's going to happen to me now? When you surrender to Krishna, it's got to be in trust. There's no fear of what's going to happen to me now. Now that I've surrendered, everything is going to be beautiful. And God is only defeated by bhakti. That's what Prabhupada is saying. God is only defeated by bhakti. And it's such an amazing and beautiful thing that the most powerful and intelligent and famous and beautiful and wealthiest person allows himself to be overpowered by a sincere demonstration of love. And we're always talking about, in our circles, we're always talking about love of God, love of God, love of God. And it's got to go beyond lip service. It's got to be beyond, yeah, I believe he's there, therefore I love him. It's nothing I have to try to do. He's there. He exists, so therefore I love him. I remember my mother saying once that she didn't believe that a child automatically loves a parent. And a child, it's so easy for a child to take a parent for granted. Because, in the healthiest of circumstances, a child has always had his or her needs taken care of. They've always had love showered upon them. So it's easy to take that for granted. But to actually understand the sacrifice of the parent is something that you have to consciously consider as a child. And that's why relationships with parents are often rocky. In the beginning, they're good because, when you're a little kid, it's easy to accept your parent. When you become a teenage, the teenage years are always a little more difficult because then you start to think for yourself. The child starts to think for themselves, and you can sort of reject what the parent has to say, has to think, has to offer. But as an adult, it's much more common that you appreciate everything that your parent has done. So there's no automatic love for God. It's something that we have to, and we're in that process now. We're in that process of recognizing everything Krishna does for us. What the unbelievable love that Krishna has to offer us, that we're getting all the time and we're not always acknowledging. And the fact that he is, and this is beyond even what's mostly in theological circles, beyond what is normally accepted, as possible in relationship with God, but that he is willing to surrender to us is just magnificent. It's magnificently beautiful. And he is willing to surrender to us, not because we have so much to give him, not because we're so smart or beautiful or strong or wealthy or famous. It's because of our devotion to him, which I don't want you to take the wrong way either. It's not conditional. It's actually simply because of his love for us. It's because of his love for us. However, when I say because of our devotion to him, I mean it's because his love for us is so great that it can't get any more intense. His love for us can go no higher, can go no deeper. That said, when we choose, when we make the active choice to become devoted to him, guess what happens? His love goes higher. His love gets deeper. His love gets more intense. And at that point, he will surrender to us. His love for us is there. But when we make that choice, especially after having turned away from him, when we make that choice and turned away from him, then wait a minute. He's turning around. He's looking toward me. He's walking toward me. That's so exhilarating for Krishna. And I, for one, sometimes have a great regret and it's a little embarrassing that I sort of make Krishna go through that. That I've turned away from him to begin with. But when I turn toward him again, it's all the more meaningful to Krishna. So we're all in that position right now. We're all in that position of having turned away from him. All right, not Gaur Kumar, I'll give you that. He just came to help the rest of us out. But the rest of us, we're working toward turning ourselves around and taking those steps. And sometimes it's plodding and sometimes it's easier, but we're taking those steps. And no matter if it's plodding, if Krishna sees us hesitating, or if he sees us sort of doing a light jog, whatever the case is, he's excited about it. And he's ready to play these games with us, where sometimes he'll let us win and sometimes he'll win. As long as we're willing to surrender, he's willing to surrender. George Harrison has this song from Living in the Material World album, which is heavily influenced by Prabhupada. The song is called "The Lord Loves the One," and then parenthetically it says, "Who loves the Lord," right? And he got criticized by this. I remember reading one review where the reviewer said, like, "What kind of selfish God is this? So he only loves me if I love him." But of course, we know that the meaning of the song is the Lord always loves us, but he will take an active role in that love. He will demonstrate that, right? We always talk about Bhakti is not just love, but Prabhupada translates it as devotional service. It's love in service, because it's a demonstration. So once we demonstrate that love, then Krishna will take a part. And that's just because that's how we want it. We leave Krishna to say, I don't want your help. And then once we start acting as sane people might, then we say, no, I do want your help. I need your help. Okay, so let's revisit the question from a little earlier. All right. Do we believe that surrendering to Krishna is worthwhile? Now, if we're Sukracharya, we might say no. Maybe. If we're Bali Maharaj, we might say yes. If we're Yadunath Das, we might say sometimes. What about if we're you? What would you say? Would you say that it's worthwhile to surrender to Krishna? Or would you say it's not really worthwhile? And I would like to let that question not be rhetorical. But if anybody wants to answer that question, but I want to warn you before you answer the question, if anyone wants to answer that question aloud, I want to warn you that if you volunteer to answer the question, I'm going to ask you why. Okay, why you think it's worthwhile or why you think it's not worthwhile. So is there anyone who cares to answer that question for me? And I can understand if no one wants to. I would like to add that if I do think it's worthwhile to surrender to Krishna, doesn't mean that I necessarily think I am doing it, or even that I can do it, but I do think it's worthwhile. Let me see what Ananda Bihari Prabhu here says. Surrender is worthwhile because one, we don't have much to surrender in the first place. That's a good point. And two, we don't have to give up anything, just redirect for Krishna. Good points, Ananda Bihari Prabhu. Yeah, we don't have much to surrender. Like before I was saying, like I can't surrender my wealth, I can't surrender my intelligence, my beauty, all this stuff. I mean, you can surrender these things, but they're not really ours to give. The thing that we can surrender is our intention, you know, our hearts, our minds, really. If you think about it, it might get down to just, yeah, I can offer my intelligence and try to do this thing for Krishna, or yeah, I can surrender my money and buy this for the temple, or etc. But the thing that Krishna really wants is our minds, and you know, there's this idea in Vaishnavism that the mind and the heart are the same thing in a sense. So if I can surrender my mind, I'm giving my mind to Krishna. That's the ultimate offering. That means I'm thinking about Krishna all the time. I'm doing everything for Krishna, which speaks to Ananda Bihari Prabhu's second point there, redirecting, giving everything to Krishna. So by giving my mind to Krishna, I'm giving my heart to Krishna, and that's what we do have to give to Krishna, to surrender to Krishna, our hearts. Does anybody else have any thoughts about whether
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Yadunath.
Hare Krishna, Gail.
Yeah, well, your question brings to light my inner conflict, because on the one hand, I think it is worthwhile because I love the objective. You know, I love the idea of being in a profoundly loving relationship, that there is no threat of ever being annihilated. But the conflict comes because sense gratification is all I know. And a little bit of, you know, well, not even a little bit, but, you know, innumerable instances of Krishna's affection directed toward me, you know. But despite that long list of his displays of affection, that is still in stiff competition with sense gratification for me. So hence the conflict. So yes, it's worthwhile, but he has competition. That's my answer.
Yeah, thanks, Gail. That might be the answer for many of us, actually, because that's our challenge in taking up Krishna consciousness. The stiff competition, and this competition is not like a thin piece of paper. Okay, it's really like cinder blocks and cinder blocks of concrete sense gratification that's taken place over millions and millions of lifetimes. So when you say that's all I know, which is accurate for all of us, it's not a light thing. It's all we know for so long, But the fact that you're catching these little glimpses into the other side, that's the crack. That's the crack in the competition. And we need to exploit that crack. Find that weakness in our own competition there, and
fan the spark, right?
Say again.
Kind of like fan the spark.
Yeah, in a different way. Right.
Yeah, in the other side.
Yeah, the other side. You find that spark, you fan the spark. So we find that weakness and we pounce on that weakness like a boxer in a fight. I just remember seeing like the Rocky movie all those years ago. And he was like, right, his weakness is this. Go after this. So it's go after the weakness. So whatever we're doing that facilitates that glimpse into Krishna's love, we have to exploit that by going further into that. So if I get that, if I get that glimpse by doing this, then I got to do more of this. If I get that glimpse by doing that, I got to do more of that. And we have to be mindful of what prevents that from happening. And one major thing that prevents that from happening, getting that glimpse, is offenses to the holy name while we're chanting, and while we're not chanting too. But it's really easy so to do while we're chanting, particularly because it's easy just to get lost. We all have the experience. Our mind wanders before we know it. We're thinking about something and like, okay, how the heck did I get there? And you try to retrace your steps, like, oh, okay, that was connected to that, and that was connected. Oh my God! But let's keep in mind that it's not it's not an offense that our mind travels and wanders away from the holy names. That in itself is not an offense. It's when we indulge in that. It's when we don't try to bring it back. So as long as we're trying our best to bring the mind is going to wander. As long as we're trying our best to focus it on the holy names, then that's what we can do. Try not to commit that offense, and then we're going to let it go. And if we just, if we need to follow that train of thought, then let's just put the bag down for a second and think that thing out, or let's write it down on a piece of paper so we can think about it later. But as long as we'll keep just uttering the names just from our lips and allowing ourselves to think about it, that's what's going to impede that glimpse from happening. But if we're trying, then we're okay. Anyway, thank you for sharing that, Gail, because we all have that competition. Gaur Kumar Prabhu says sometimes giving our hearts and surrendering to Krishna can be tough for us due to lack of reciprocation. Yeah, that's a big problem, and I think I would say the same things that I'm saying here. Reciprocation, I find that the reciprocation comes when I'm really doing my best, whether I'm succeeding or failing, or whether I'm really doing my best. And the reciprocation can come in so many different ways. It might be that like blissful feeling that temporarily comes. It might come in the answer to a prayer. It might come in the form of the answer to a question. And I think that we have to be conscious of the fact that he's reciprocating all the time, because I think a lot of time what happens is he's reciprocating with me, but I'm not recognizing it. I'm just like, wow, this great thing happened, and I was just thinking about that. What a coinky dink, But just the other day, I was considering for myself that by chanting with a real conscious effort of I want to engage in your service. Please give me service. It can be a little frightening sometimes because I don't know if I have time for service right now. I don't know if I have the wherewithal for service right now. And I felt like, you know what, I better just pray, consciously think about the meaning. Because, sometimes I pray and I'm focused on the names, sometimes I'm not focused on the names, but I'm not always focused on the meaning of the mantra as Prabhupada presented it to us. Please engage me in your service. So I really entered into being aware of the meaning of the mantra as Prabhupada gave it to us. Please engage me in your service. Please engage me in your service. And quite honestly, it was an hour or maybe two after the japa session where I got a pesky message from Gorsharan Prabhu. Can I do Bhagavatam class this month? And this was like a Friday, Gorsharan, wasn't it? Friday? Yeah, it was not a lot. Usually these things happen well in advance. Everything, every fiber of my being at that point says like, no, I don't have enough time to prepare, but then I connected. I was like, oh my God, I asked for devotional service and he gave it to me. Shoot. So then it's up to me to embrace that. So that's why I said like, all right, I'm a little worried about this, but okay, Gorsharan, thank you for being Krishna's instrument, I think, So I don't know if that's helpful, Gokul Prabhu, but that's what comes to mind. Yes, Adipusha Prabhu.
Yeah, such a wonderful question about whether or not I'm convinced that this is worth it and genuine. And in our own experience, and according to Shastra, that tipping point occurs. Queen Kunti says, anybody can throw themselves into this devotional service to Krishna, but akinchana gocharam, they must become materially exhausted. When we start to understand, wait a minute, what's the use of this material activity? If I'm on the Titanic and it's sinking, what's the use of an extra pillow or, a bigger room? Wait a minute, this is going nowhere. So one stage is akinchana gocharam. We'll become materially exhausted and realize that the activities in the material world are a dead end. And then, according to Shastra, Savasha Chaham Mridisani Visto, in the heart, Krishna sees in the heart, this one wants the truth. When we see that there's so much falsity and so much counterfeit, ridiculous possibilities, and then we say, well, what is the answer? What is the answer? Where is the genuine value activity? And then Krishna sees that. And then Guru, because I don't know anything about Krishna. But Krishna, when the disciple is ready, the Guru appears in our life. If we have no Guru, it means we don't want a Guru. We don't want a master. But when we say, what is the truth? What is the path? Then Krishna sends Guru, and we perceive the fact that here's somebody who's worthy of my trust and obedience. And sometimes people ask me question, and I'm really praying to Krishna, what should I say to this person? They don't seem to be really ready to hear anything. And we says, Radha Muralidhar.
Right.
Then we say, ask yourself this question. Do you want a genuine spiritual master who's worthy of your complete trust and obedience? Ask yourself that question. And if you do, Krishna will send Guru in the day of inspiration by the person that Krishna sends. Then we approach Krishna. Okay, I'll go to Srila Prabhupada. Sorry to talk so much. Beautiful, Radha Muralidhar. Thank you so much for a wonderful class.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for talking so much. I really like the way you brought out those points. In some traditions, it's sort of easy let me not talk like that. Before I came to Krishna consciousness, my experience was I could say things like, if I get this, then I promise I'll do that, or if just trying to make some bargain with the Lord. And sometimes it's easier to make promises and things when there's no reciprocation, because you don't know, you make assumptions. You make assumptions, so therefore I can make an assumption about myself. What I found in Krishna consciousness is very often you do get those answers. I think what I just said was not very clear. So let me say, like in the example that Adipurush Prabhu just brought up, I'm supposed to take a guru. I want to take a guru, but I haven't found a guru, or but the fact is that Krishna knows our hearts, like he was saying. And if deep down, like my head thinks you're supposed to take a guru, but deep down in my heart, if I'm scared of taking a guru, whatever it is, whatever's blocking me, I don't really want to take a guru because I'm going to have to sacrifice, then Krishna is going to keep guru far away. But right, as soon as you make that adjustment, like, no, really now, I really do want a guru now. Like I said, yes, now there's sincerity, so here is guru.
Even if we have guru, there's that saying, guru in a box, we think, here's my toaster, and here's my cell phone, and here's my guru. Haribo. Don't let him in. Here's Shukracharya speaking. Don't let him in. So we have guru, but we don't let him speak into our life. We don't want him to ask us to do something we don't want to do. So we keep him at arm's length, and then what's the use? Guru in a box.
Right.
Master means master of all. The Christians say, unless he's the master of all, he's not the master at all. If there's any aspect of my life that I don't want to turn over and say, Lord, what do you want? Then it's just like a pseudo disciple.
Right. Right on. Yeah. So just before getting to a couple more comments, Gail, sometimes I think of this as like, for millions and millions of lifetimes, I've been, whatever it is, I've been getting drunk, I've been getting high, I've been having great sex, I've been doing this, all that, I've done it. And in the spirit of, I know, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami used to say, I think Prabhupada told this not only to him, but to others, just give this one life to Krishna. Now, I can't say I can imbibe that the way my Guru Maharaj has, and others have, but I do think like that sometimes. Like, I've done it all before, even though I'm having this urge, I want to do it again. Let me just step back. I've done it already. Let me do this other thing. Sometimes that's helpful for me. We're over time here, so I just want to read these comments. Yeah, Olga says, I think surrender is worthwhile because everything works out better when I do. Good for you, Olga. If you have that experience, that's great. And that's a great reason to continue. Jamuna Jaya, I know surrender is worthwhile, mainly because I have seen people who are surrendered and I can see the rightness in it. I'm not there, but I am moved to walk in their wake. Yeah, that's a big one for me too, man. Just having examples of this and what it brings to these people is really, really valuable. Which is why I have such reverence for all of Prabhupada's disciples, for taking on what they've taken on and gone through what they've gone on. I mean, I walked into an institution that was already established. Adipurush Prabhu, you and your God brothers and God sisters, you created it. And I know there was a lot of blood and sweat that went into that, and it wasn't always pleasant, but you stayed with it because you thought the surrender was worthwhile. So we're in your debt of gratitude. So right on, Jamuna Jaya. Evan says, surrender is the perfection of our life when we realize that everything is temporary, illusory. When we realize that everything is temporary and illusory, except for our relationship to Krishna. It's the perfection of our life. It's extremely hard, but attachment to anything but him is not worthwhile. They are dead ends. Yeah, right. That's right on, Evan. Yeah. So yeah, it's worth evaluating, right? The competition is there, and Krishna is there. Yeah, the competition is strong, but let's really look at these things for what they are, not for this temporary thing that they might give us, but for what they are, and make the right choice. Kula Pradeep, Prabhu. Okay, thank you. Sundar Ananda, Prabhu. Yeah, okay, yeah. So people are just acknowledging that it is worthwhile to ask this question and to recognize what the result of surrendering is and what the result of surrendering is not. And then, as Krishna tells Arjuna in the Gita, do what you wish to do. May we all make the right choice. Thank you for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.